Hello there and welcome to my channel. So my name's Kat and today's video we're going to be going over the top 10 Goodreads award choice nominees for the thriller category. So I decided to read the top 10 and I'm going to tell you guys about it. This is going to be vlog style because so far I've read half of them, I think half of them. So I only have a few more to read, but I'm going to talk to you guys right now about the ones that I've already read and then we'll go into later like a little vlog style thing of the final, I think 5 that I have to read. So as always, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, let's have some fun talking about some thriller books. Okay, so I have read 4 of them. And we're gonna start with the one that I read most recently, which is The Housemaid's Secret by Freida McFadden. So this is book 2 in a series and her books are insanely popular. And honestly, after reading these 2, I don't understand why. I really do not. They're very readable. And I'm gonna say that in the nicest way possible in that they are very, very fast to read. Not fast-paced, fast to read. And I do not by any means get the hype of this book. I don't get why it has such a high rating because when I looked, it has like a 4.5. I personally rated it like a 2-star because nothing about this was great. And I feel terrible bashing books. I feel terrible like talking badly about books, but this is one that I truly do not think was that good. So in this, we're following a housemaid. In the first book, she worked for a family and she gets involved with like this big mystery that's going on with them. In this one, she is once again working as a housemaid for a family and she notices something is a bit off with like the wife. She's always in her room like locked away and she always seems to be covered in bruises and really like being secretive about things going on. So she gets involved and decides to take things into her own hands to help her. And I did not like this. I think that the writing was kind of terrible. It was very, I'm going to say something controversial. I think that Colleen Hoover is a terrible writer and this gave me the exact same vibes of her writing. It was very, very easy to read and that is not a compliment. Like it just was, the writing was terrible. The writing was so bad. And then the story itself, nothing about it I found interesting. I don't think there was any plot twist that was surprising. Nothing was like thrilling. Nothing was that exciting. It just gave absolutely nothing. And I do not understand how this one, like this is the one that ended up winning. I don't understand it. There is nothing about me that understands why this many people would be giving it like a 4 or 5 star. It wasn't good. It was not good at all. And like I'm like kind of curious to try other Freida McFadden books to see if any of them are a bit better, but like this was terrible. And I am really, really disappointed in how much I did not like this one. Yeah, like I don't understand. I think this was terrible. I'm not going to talk about it more, but just like this is the one pretty much out of all of these, I would not recommend reading. I recently rearranged my bookshelf, so now I can't find my copy of it, but my favorite thriller that I read this year, and what I think already, I mean, like I still have a few more books to read, but what I think is by far the best that came out this year is None of Them Is True. Or None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This was fantastic. This is like the most like perfect epitome of what I would recommend as like an incredibly like engrossing, interesting, and like addicting thriller. So in this, we're following a woman who goes out to the pub for her birthday and she's with her husband and she sees this group of people celebrating another woman's birthday and they run into each other in the bathroom and the first woman goes up to the other one and is like, oh hey, we're birthday twins, like isn't this funny, ha ha ha, like okay, we have this connection. So the woman that she comes across, Alex, is this really like well-renowned podcaster who does these interviews with people about like how they've gotten to where they are in life. So like she interviews incredibly successful people about everything that they've accomplished. But after running into each other like a few times by circumstance, she decides to start interviewing this other woman of just kind of about like, okay, like let's do something different. Let's talk about like we were born at the same day, same place. Let's talk about like how our lives diverged and just kind of like a contrast of all of these things that could have gone differently. And from there, it just gets into this like insane story of like secrets, obsession, like control, like all of this crazy secrets come out about this woman's life and all of these things that she's hiding and like these truths that she's not fully telling correctly. And this is one that you don't really know until the end what is true and what's not. Like, you have no idea if what's being told to you is actually real, and it just worked so incredibly well that way. Like, you could not tell anything that was happening. So much, like every twist and turn just like gave something away that was just so weird and fucked up and interesting. And yeah, this one was just absolute perfection. One of the few thrillers I gave 5 stars to this year, and like this should have won. This is such a good book, and I would recommend like everybody read this one. Then I have All the Dangerous Things by Stacey Willingham. So in this one, we're following a woman who, her toddler son was abducted from his crib, and it's been a few years or a year or something. She hasn't basically been able to sleep or relax ever since, and she meets up with a podcaster again, somebody who talks about true crimes, and she starts to talk about this story about how her son disappeared, and they start to work together to try and solve it. So she has these this intense insomnia and these really like blackout periods, so she starts to really question her own sanity and this possibility that maybe she is the one who caused something. And she really like starts to second guess like every person in her life about what they could have done and what maybe she did. So it's really like just a mother trying to figure out this disappearance and try to unravel all these secrets in her life and track down the truth. I thought this one was really interesting. It's unfortunately a little forgettable. I did read this, I would say the beginning of 2023, and it has kind of gone away in my mind. It's not one that I've really ever thought about again, unfortunately. So while I'd say that it was good and I enjoyed it quite a bit at the moment, it's not one that has stayed with me by any means. So it's just kind of like run of the mill. And then the other one that I read was Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. So we're following Vera, who is an elderly woman who runs a tea shop that's kind of failing, and she's really lonely in life. She doesn't have much going on, but one day she wakes up to a dead body in her tea shop, and she decides to get involved with the investigation. Nobody wants her to. The police are like very actively trying to push her out of it, but she's just like an old lady with nothing else going on. So she decides that this is her calling. So she gets information about this guy who died. She makes a big list of suspects, and she kind of like embeds herself in all of their lives and tries to figure out which one of them was the one who actually killed this man. Like, she finds his ex, his brother, like co-workers, like all of these people, and really funnily like kind of creates a family with all of them. Like, it's such a found family vibe while they're all trying to solve this murder together, but also like see if one of them is also the murderer, because they really don't know. But I thought this was so silly, so fun, such like a great palate cleanser. Like, this is definitely a book that I would recommend as a fun read. Also, I read it, I listened to it in audio, and I would 100% recommend it because it was just like fun and silly, and it worked in so many ways for me. So yeah, this one was like, I deeply loved this. I can't remember if I gave it a 4 or 5 star, but it was like a very high rating for me. And it's one like I also very much remembered, like as I was unpacking my house after I moved, this is what I was listening to on audio, and it just like propelled me to keep wanting to do more work around the house because I was enjoying it so much. So that's another one that I thought was super fun. So now we're gonna move on into the vlog style, I guess, and I'm gonna be reading the remainder books, and I'll let you guys know what I think about them as we're going on, and if there's any of them that I actually think are good, or maybe they're all trash, but we will see. So I have finished The Only One Left by Riley Sager, and I truly cannot tell you how like thoroughly through and through shocked I am that I loved this. So this book takes place in a small town where, actually I'm not sure if it's a small town, but in a town where I think like 40 years prior there had been this family, this really rich family that was very brutally murdered within their own home. And the only survivor of this, the only one left, is this woman named Lenora Ho. So Lenora at the time was, I believe, 18 years old, and she was the only person who survived this massacre against the family, and nobody has ever really been able to determine who killed everyone. So it was the parents and her sister. So Lenora has been the one who's been kind of like suspected of having murdered everyone for this long, and also like she's always been suspected, and the only reason she was never arrested is because they couldn't prove that it wasn't her. So we're like 40, 50, 60 years later, something like that, and Lenora at this point is a very old lady. She has been like suffered from polio, a stroke, all of this stuff, and at this point is basically bedridden. She can't use half of her body. She can't speak. She really like can only communicate through tapping, like 1's for yes, 2 for no, like that type of thing. And yeah, at this point, that's kind of all she has in her life. Then we follow Kit, who is a caregiver, and her last mission, her last job, she really came under fire because her patient died. And it is supposedly she left out the medication by accident, and they were never able to prove that she didn't leave out this painkiller on purpose that her patient then used to kill themselves. So it's always really been suspected that she gave patient like a mercy killing, like she purposely left out the painkillers so that her patient could kill herself. But again, like they've never been able to fully prove that she didn't. So kind of as like a last chance, Kit gets this job being Lenora's caregiver, and she's very much like, this is not a desired job. Nobody wants to work there. Everybody's kind of freaked out by her and like really doesn't want to be in this mansion where all of the killings took place too. So Kit goes in and very quickly like forms this bond with Lenora. Like the two of them get along, and Kit also realizes that Lenora's kind of been pretending that to be less capable than she is. She's in fact incredibly smart and is able to type on a typewriter to like basically communicate, talk a bit more about herself, like talk a bit more to people. So they come to an agreement where basically Lenora is going to start typing out her story and tell Kit the truth of what actually happened on this fateful night where everyone died. And it went ways I did not expect. I was so intensely confused by the end of it because it just like the plot twists that were coming were just so out of left field. It felt like ones that I could not have guessed by any means. And like I could tell weird shit was up. You could tell for sure that like the story you were being told was not the actual story, but I never would have guessed like what actually had happened. Like it was just so intensely interesting, and I was so gripped trying to figure out what happened. And I cannot remember the last time that a Riley Sager book did this to me. Like his last few releases have been so bad, and it's been a really long time since one of his books like deeply caught my interest. So yeah, I love this one. I thought it was super thrilling, super fun. The plot twists were just so insanely interesting, and I'm just so happy with how it ended up going. So this one's a 4-star. I really liked it. And honestly, if you're kind of in the same boat as me where you have been feeling like a bit done with Riley Sager and like really not trusting his books lately, give this one a try. I do think that this is definitely considerably better than a lot of what he's been putting out lately. So I have DNF'd my first book for this video, and I really oh, sorry, I've just swatched makeup, but I really feel like I have nothing at all to say, which is also because I only read like 15% of it. But I did DNF I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca McKay. So this one is a professor returns to the school that she went to where I guess 20 years previously she'd been in part of a play and like the production of a Shakespeare play, and I guess I don't think she was an actor, I think she was behind the scenes, but one of the main actors somehow disappeared between one of their stage appearances and was later found murdered. So we are following this woman now, was a friend of hers. She is a professor, but she is also a true crime podcaster. So she and somebody else work together to like do these deep dives into different true crime. So from what I'm thinking, what I assume happens is that she goes back to the school where the event happened. She was teaching their students about stuff about podcasting, and a lot of them were getting into like, maybe let's talk about this crime that happened before. Maybe we should explore the true crime realm. And I think that the way this book was going to go is that they would start developing a podcast about it and figuring out what happened. I just really could not get myself to be interested in this. I really had no interest whatsoever. I didn't really find the mystery that compelling, and I didn't like the writing either. So I really very quickly disconnected and couldn't get myself to keep going, and did not care in any way about what could have potentially happened in this crime or what the resolution would be. So I did decide to DNF it pretty quickly on, and I feel fine with that. I really don't think there's anything that would have made me potentially enjoy this more, I don't think this would have been more than a 3-star. just based off the general vibes I was getting. So yeah, this one is done, and now I think I only have 2 more books to go, so yay. I've gotten just over halfway into All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby, and I'm amazed. Like I had a really good feeling going into this one because I've read one of his previous books, which is Razorblade Tears, and that was a major win for me. Like, it was about 2 fathers avenging their gay sons who had been killed because of their sexuality, and the 2 of them like hunting down the killer and like getting really involved in this case, and that one was fantastic. This one, we are following the first Black sheriff of this small southern town. So, you know, there's definitely some tension there. But he is involved in this. He gets called in for a shooting at the local high school. And when they go there, the suspect who had shot a teacher comes out and is very, like, insistent. He's like, look at the guy's phone. Look at the guy's phone. See what he did. I killed him for a reason. Like, you have to see what he did. And basically, after everything happens, after the situation is done, they go in and look through this teacher's phone, and they find truly disturbing things. And basically, this leads them to see that there is a serial killer in their town, and these people had been working alongside him, and they did not know it. They did not know it was happening. They have just let this slip by. And so there's all these videos, there's all these pictures of 3 men. So one of them is covered in mask, like fully head to toe in black in a mask. So they weren't able to identify him. But this ends up being the plot of the book, is that they are trying to figure out who this 3rd man is and stop all of these horrendous crimes that he's been committing. And as they go along, it seems like this killer is 1 step ahead of them, and he keeps just outsmarting them at every turn, and he just keeps doing these like really disturbing things. Like, so far there's been a few scenes that are already very messed up, and I have a feeling it's going to keep getting that way, but this is incredibly good. Definitely much more messed up than I was expecting. And yeah, I don't know exactly what vibe I was going into this thinking it would be, but oh, this is messed up so far, and hardcore look at the trigger warnings before reading this, but it is incredibly good as well. This ended up being so intensely good, and I can't say I'm surprised. I was really going, like, honestly, almost immediately I could tell that this was going to be fantastic, and yes, it ended up staying that way throughout the whole book. But I do immediately need to say, some of the stuff that happened was insanely fucked up, and there was some very disturbing things. So please look at content warnings, because yeah, some of the murders are truly horrendous and gruesome, and there's some images in my head that unfortunately I don't think will leave for a bit. But this was a fantastic thriller, like hunting down this potential serial killer, and that part was so good. And the killer was somebody who just felt like 1 step ahead of them at all times, and just so smart and just like so truly evil and disgusting. Like, it was really good, everything that we saw. And this was just like the whole aspect of this as a Black sheriff in a small town, like especially a small southern town, like that is very much the forefront. It really like, again, disgustingly dived into the racism of this town and all of this like terrible stuff that was happening in the way that people were still treating Black folk at this day and age. Like, in this book, I think it was at the same time, there is a far-right group that wants to hold a parade in celebration of the town's Confederate history. And that part was like, honestly, almost as disgusting as the murders. Like, you see, like, as side, like, this horrendous stuff happening with a killer, but also this horrendous stuff happening with these people who are treating the Black residents of the town, like, just truly terribly. And just overall, yeah, it was like really hard to read, really disgusting, really like emotionally heart-wrenching in that way, like just really hard stuff to sit with and think about. And it was incredibly well done. Like, I truly think that this was one of the best thrillers I've read in a while, and absolutely is going to be a 5-star. Like, there's no question whatsoever about it, because this is definitely one I feel like is going to sit with me for a bit. Maybe not for great reasons, maybe for some reasons that I would rather not be thinking about for a while, but it's still going to be there. And it did absolutely make like a really intense impact on me. So there we go. Another brilliant, like absolutely perfect, so intensely good book. I I'm amazed. This was so good. So we're following a murderer, a serial killer who goes through the country, and he's committed all these crimes. And one of them that takes place, and our main narrator we're following, is he commits a massacre against a sorority house. So 2 girls are killed, 2 are very seriously maimed, and we are dealing with the aftermath of this as they're trying to catch this killer, and then the court case, and bringing to light all of these other killings that he may or may not have done, trying to link them to him, the media not cooperating, the police officers just completely ignoring every fact. And this was so good, but oh my god, I've never been more frustrated with the police or the legal system than reading some of the things that happen in this one. So the initial murder takes place in the 70s, and at that point when it's going down, we're following the head of the sorority house as she sees the murderer escaping the house. She's able to identify him, but we're dealing with the aftermath of the police basically completely not believing or dismissing the testimonies that they give. They really terribly handling it. The university absolutely doing nothing to support these girls after all of their sorority sisters were attacked. And just seeing how incredibly dismissed every one of these girls were as just a stupid sorority girl. Everybody just immediately seemed to completely discount them and think of them as useless, silly girls. And obviously to them, they're they can bring no value to this investigation. They can't give us anything reliable. And it was just so intensely frustrating to see, because so much of it was just these terrible stereotypes against the women, and just so frustrating to see. And then we see this whole plot too of, after the murderer is caught, he is basically sensationalized in the media, and he's very much the way you see the judge treating him, where he's calling him oh, young man, young boy, this 30-year-old man, and he's talking about oh, you're such a smart boy. This is the judge saying it, and oh, your life could have been so great if you hadn't made this mistake, and all of this shit. And the way that the media is treating him as this man who's being portrayed negatively, but they're very much oh, he could have been such a promising man. So sad that this happened to him, that he committed these murders. And I just feel not getting too much into everything that happens, but I think that this is incredibly thought-provoking, and it is very much something that I'm going to be thinking about for a while. And just some of the intricacies of the plot, and some of the frustrations that you see, and some of these things that just really make me angry. But it was so well written. So it is a 4.5 for me. It was really good. Honestly, the only issue is that there were definitely some parts where it kind of dragged and kind of got a little bit less interest. Not even less interesting, just it got a little, it just dragged. It dragged a little bit in some points. But yeah, this was fantastic. I highly recommend it. I think this was so good, and I have not seen enough people talk about it. It is so good. So there we go. That is the end of this video. I definitely do think that some of these books deserve to be in the top 10, not all. I am really annoyed. I'm annoyed that The Housemaid's Secret won. I think a lot of people read it because Frida McFadden is kind of a hyped author right now, and this is a very quick book to read. But when I look on this list, it did not deserve to win. This was not a good thriller. This was, I've already talked about it. This was terrible. I really think that this was a terrible book, and there's absolutely no way that this one should have won. I'm personally going to say that I think that the best one was None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, and followed very closely by All the Sinners Bleed and Bright Young Women. I think that those are absolutely my top 3, and the top 3 that I would highly recommend checking out from this video. They are definitely the ones that were most thought-provoking and really captured my mind, and I think that are going to stick with me for a bit. And also the ones that just were so truly thrilling and engaging. And yeah, I'm going to definitely say that I think None of This Is True should have won. So kind of upset that it didn't. But yeah, that is the end of this video. Please let me know down below if you've read any of these books, and if you agree with my thoughts on any of them, or if there's any other thrillers you've read from 2023 that you think should have been recommended. So thank you for watching, and hopefully I will see you guys in the next one.